Okay, folks, here is the second part of Weird Life. We're going to be talking about animals. So the first part was about plants, and now we're going to go to animals. Now this is fairly lengthy, so again, take this in chunks. So I'm going to try to point out things that you need to focus on. By no means are we going to pretend that we're in zoology class where you would have to know details. So I'm going to do my best to kind of focus in or dial us in into the things that are important. Okay, so let's go and begin. And of course, this comes directly from Pearson. I thought it was pretty good, so I didn't really make any modifications myself. So it looks like all this comes from chapter 10. So it starts out, are you an animal? So what traits do we share with jellyfish, earthworms, and chimpanzees? You probably heard we're related to this, that, or the other. Well, what it means is that, as an example, with cnidarians or a jellyfish that you see as that very top image, what we mean by that is that muscle movement, muscle tissue, being able to sense the environment, okay, never existed on the planet until there was an adaptation from phylum Porifera, which was sponges, the first animal on this planet, okay? And the molecules that came together to form the protein that enabled this tissue building of muscles existed, okay? And then all other subsequent organisms, as we advance through the animal world, that same molecular code is used throughout all the animal kingdom, okay? So that recipe for muscle is the same recipe in jellyfish, the same recipe in chimpanzees, earthworms, humans. Okay, so that's why they say we're related. We have DNA of similarities. Okay, so that's all. I mean, we're not physically from jellyfish, but you know, we kind of are, I suppose, if you look at it. Anyway, so that's the big picture. All right, just a couple of things that we want to make sure we remember. All right, so animals are heterotrophs. Make sure you know the word heterotroph. Heterotroph means that we have to consume stuff. We break things down. Our metabolic, catabolically break things down to get the nutrients to the macromolecules, okay? We don't produce our own food. That's what autotrophs do. And those are your producers, your plants, okay? So make sure we understand the difference between heterotrophs and autotrophs. And animals are autotrophs. Heterotrophs. Okay, so just this is more FYI, but the hypothesis that the first animal evolved around 600 million years ago. So that is a long time ago. Okay, 600 million years. Hard for me to get my head wrapped around it. All right, so all animals share a set of common features. Okay, so as we advance, as you will see as we look at some of the big phyla, that there are common traits, common features, okay? Like here we're looking at a family of a cheetah or whatever this big cat is. You know, so we've got muscles, reproductive system, we have a nervous system, we have a brain, we are eating, consuming other stuffs. Okay, we're multicellular, eukaryotic organisms. Okay, so we're a complex cellular structure. And we're diploid, meaning we have a full complement of DNA. Okay, whether it's a human, a cheetah, a gazelle, earthworm, things of that nature. Okay, so we all share common features. So I'm not asking you to memorize the 9 major phyla. Basically, I'm hoping that you'll kind of understand it as we look at each phyla and know what animal organism is within each one. So I guess in that sense, I guess you would need to memorize it. But I'm hoping that sponges, cnidarians, flatworms, annelids, all these things will be obvious, and hopefully the majority of these you really already know just by looking at the pictures. Okay, so we'll go through those. as well. And then also, before I go to the next slide, and this is especially true for those taking lab, is knowing what each phyla brings, for the most part, not all of them. When it comes to testing, I'm only going to pick the ones that are hopefully more obvious, like jointed appendages for arthropods, meaning your lobsters, your shrimps, your insects, your roaches, things of that nature, or mollusks. For those, we live on the Gulf Coast here, so we're definitely from the mollusks, oysters, clams, things of that nature. Okay, and of course, I would probably definitely consider the cnidarians, because I just happen to like the cnidarians, so I tend to utilize those in testing, but making sure that you understand what they bring to the table. Stinging cells, a modified cell other than what phylum Porifera has, which is they don't have any tissues. So this is an advancement. So cnidarians are much more advanced than the sponges, and the sponges are the very first organism, or rather the animal, that existed on the planet. Okay. And then we go down to the chordates. We'll talk about those later. That's a little bit more sophisticated. Okay, so now from here on out, we're going to be talking about the different phylum. Okay, and we're not going to go down the rabbit hole very far. So it's not going to be hopefully it's not going to be too bad. And so hopefully the homework will help you out with that, and the reading assignments. But definitely pay close attention to each particular one. So with sponges, it's these two things that you basically really want to know. Sponges, they do not have body symmetry. They're asymmetrical. They don't have any particular shape. You can't cut them in half. You cut them, they're not the same either way, okay? And they don't have any tissues, body tissues. They're the very first organism, or I keep on saying that. They're the very first animal on the planet, okay? So make sure you know that. And then the cnidarians are radial symmetry, meaning you can cut it down any particular way and it will be identical to the other side. Okay, and then also you want to remember that they have tissues and stinging cells. Those stinging cells have to be called nematocysts. I don't know if there's going to be a question on that word. If there is, I would probably use it, so I would definitely know that word if you're watching this video. Nematocysts. Trust me, those that do not watch these videos will not know the answer. So there's your bonus for you. So I don't need to continue on anymore. This is just expanding on the sponge. For those of you that are not familiar with sponges, they don't move. They have no movement, muscle movement. They have no tissues. They're more silica-based, if you will, calcium-based, and they just have pores where they're just dependent on the water column flowing, or currents flowing through, bringing materials and then going out. And so all of these spicules, if you will, here's trying an illustration right here of them, they all have to be exposed to the water column in order to gather the nutrient. There's no plumbing, there's no veins, there's nothing to distribute these nutrients throughout the body. Okay, so literally it's the most simple form that can exist, and this is it right here. And then we get more advanced as we go to different phyla, as we have named them. Okay, and there's some different sponges that exist in the marine environment. And then just to get more information about the cnidarians, which include sea anemones, hydras, corals, and jellyfish. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot when it comes to the anemone and the jellyfish. The jellyfish is the newest kid on the block of this group. This is the cousin of the anemone. And you can look at them, they almost look inverted. Okay, so in a quick nutshell is that basically there was a mutation that occurred way back when, and it took root, or took hold, where an organism was created in the form of a jellyfish. These anemones are more sessile. Okay, they don't really move, so they're dependent on food coming to them, and then these tentacles, they can move around. This whole body structure can move, and then that's how they consume and get their nutrient. Now, with the jellyfish, with this mutation, and it took hold, it was able to adapt to the environment, so it was a good adaptation, a good mutation. Now you've got this organism that can move throughout the water column and go after food. Well, not necessarily go after, but it has tentacles. And there's a variety of different species of jellyfish that ensnares us. And unfortunately, a lot of us have been stung by these nematocysts, they're these stinging cells. One thing I want you to know about cnidarians is the polyp, right here, which is the sea anemone, and then the medusa. Okay, this is going to be the jellyfish. The polyp is the stationary portion, and then the floating medusa. Okay, that's the jelly. Okay, so make sure you know those two terms. And then again, just some pictures of cnidarians. Brain coral, that's your hydra, kind of a cool looking guy. The sea wasp is a deep water jelly, and your sea bay anemone, for you aquarium or saltwater enthusiasts, y'all are very familiar with these sea bay anemones. They're the lesser expensive ones to buy if you get into anemones. All right, I'm not going to really get into a whole heck of a lot of the worms, but believe it or not, they are very important. Okay, flatworms, annelids, and roundworms. Okay, so what the flatworms bring to the table is bilateral symmetry. Didn't exist before, and we are bilateral. You also have a gastrovascular cavity. Okay, so we have a cavity that stuff can go into. We have eye spots. Now they can't see, but they can differentiate, I believe, you know, like light and dark, something along those lines. We have sex organs that have been generated, okay, some form of a type of a sex organ. Okay. And then here are some of our flatworms. We have models of this in microbiology, and it looks like a sci-fi deal. And then just when it comes to the annelids, they bring segmentation. I'm kind of speaking with these, I just want to verbally tell you about these guys and what they bring, so it puts everything into context. I'm not asking you to necessarily, I don't want you to memorize all this stuff, okay? But I do want you to appreciate the fact that even though worms, I don't like worms, but believe it or not, when they evolved or mutated from, again, we're going from cnidarians to the worm world, they mutated and brought along these adaptations, these mutations and genes that produce the proteins that produce these particular features of an organism. Okay, so now again, bilateral symmetry, we have a complete digestive tract. So it flows throughout the body, a closed circulatory system, okay? And then we have body cavities and body segments. And then, of course, there's some examples of such. And then we go to these last ones, the roundworms. And they just get a little bit more fine-tuned. They don't have body segments, a complete digestive tract. And again, they're bilateral. Okay, those are nematodes, nasty critters. Okay. So those are the roundworms, annelids, and flatworms. I don't foresee me asking you any particular questions on that. I just wanted to talk to you about it because I don't want to leave anybody out. Okay, mollusks. Now those are something that you probably will see a little bit of. So let's talk about mollusks. And they are very diverse. Okay, so now what we have is a defensive mechanism. Okay, so as you can see, what we talked about before, these organisms or these animals, there's nothing to protect them. It's just flesh. Okay. Now we have an animal that has created a defensive mechanism in the form of a shell. Okay, so that they can thrive in the environment. They adapted. Again, a mutation occurred. It was a molecule that enabled them to secrete type of and take in nutrients and minerals to be able to process and create a shell. And that is for, protection, obviously. And we got snails, slugs, oysters, clams, and then, of course, within mollusks, we have the octopus and squid, okay? Now, they have more of, they do have a lot of their protection's on the internal side. They don't really have a shell per se, but what I guess they brings them to the table is their eyesight as well. Okay. The biggest thing that I would like you to know when it comes to the mollusks is that they have an external shell and a radula. And you go, what is a radula? A radula it's like a razor tongue, and so it's in the mouth, and they're like razors. I don't have an image of one. Another presentation I do, and so what the radula does is it actually scrapes material off of something, algae, off rocks, glass. People that have aquariums, they get snails, and they're good for cleaning the algae off. Okay, especially when it comes under rocks, because you can't get algae off rocks, but you get an army of snails. Give it a month, and that rock is clean. Okay, so external shell, most of them, not all of them. So be careful, because squid and octopus do not have external shells, but they are a mollusk. Okay, but there is a radula. Okay. And then here's a variety of different mollusks for your viewing pleasure. Okay, now that's all of mollusks. Now let's go to the arthropods. Okay, now arthropods, make sure we know they are the most numerous and diverse phylum of all the animals. And the reason being, insects. It's hard, I know, it's hard to believe that roaches is an animal, but it is. We squish them all the time and kill them, but they are. Insects are very numerous, as we all know, and that's what makes arthropods the largest of the phylum. You got arachnids, centipede, crustaceans, your shrimps, lobsters, all that good marine stuff that we like to eat. Okay, and what makes them special is, again, you notice bilateral symmetry is pretty much dominant throughout. So everything is, for the most part, until we get to echinoderms, is bilateral. And here we got body segments, the head, the thorax, the abdomen. So that sounds similar to us. Okay, so again, we're getting more sophisticated. We have a hard exoskeleton. So now we're a little bit more sophisticated. We're a lot more sophisticated than what the mollusks were, is we have a body armor. Okay, heck, we have body armor that we molt out of as we grow and grow new armor, as we know, the molting of crabs and lobsters and such. But we also have appendages that are jointed legs. So that is something that's important to know. So a hard exoskeleton, okay, is something that we need to know. Of course, that includes, we got arachnids. And I'm not making you memorize all this stuff. I just want you to know, so I'm telling you right now, when it comes to arthropods, know some of the key features. So we want to know about the hard exoskeleton and appendages. I'm not going to have you memorize which one has 6 legs, which one has 8 legs. I'm not concerned about that. I just want you to appreciate what arthropods do as an example. We're not even going to go down to different classes like the difference between crustaceans and whatever the others are that are of the phylum. Or arachnids. There we go. Again, just more illustration. Now, of course, we're looking at insects here, but you see the head, thorax, abdomen, pairs of wings, 3 pairs of legs, so they have 6 legs, compound eye. Okay, so obviously a very sophisticated animal. It is very sophisticated. We may not like them in some cases, but of course, the insects are very beneficial too. We need them. Okay, so that's all of your arthropods. And your echinoderms. Echinoderm is spiny skin. In case you're curious, what is an echinoderm? Spiny skin. Now, they are all marine, okay, and that includes starfish or sea stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, some people now have sea apples, if you keep marine aquariums, and sand dollars, okay, for those who like to collect stuff. Those are all echinoderms. Okay, now, obviously, you cannot cut this in half and it be bilateral, okay? It doesn't work that way. However, in the larval state, and this also is in chordates, in the larval state, we, or the scientists that are the taxonomists that classify things, because in the larval state they are initially bilateral, that's why they consider it bilateral, but when they get into adulthood, then it's radial symmetry. Okay, we have water vascular system. So now we're starting to have a plumbing system, a little bit more advanced, of 2 feet. So we're getting movement from that. It's completely different than what, say, your arthropods have. Okay, we have an endoskeleton. This is the first time we have a true endoskeleton of an animal. Okay. And then spiny surface, that's what echinoderm means, is spiny skin, spiny surface, hence why urchins are involved with that. And of course, tube, feet, and mouth. And here is something that's fun, is the regeneration practice, where they lose a leg and they can grow a new leg, or depending on where the break is, that portion can grow into a new starfish. Now here's food for thought for you. If indeed we are all related, would it make sense that potentially, and I don't know because I'm not a researcher, I'm not a molecular biologist, but if we have and share the molecules and the genes that make up life, would it be a consideration that we too have the genes to make the proteins to regenerate, but it's turned off, or it's part of what researchers call, we have junk DNA. They don't know what it is. So is it possible that we have that capability? Or we have the capability, as all animals have similar capabilities. Do we have the capabilities to grow wings? It's just like we used to have the capability of creating our own vitamin C internally, apparently. But we no longer do anymore. It has left us, for whatever reason. It through generations and generations over the millennia, that we have lost the ability to create our own vitamin C. So now we have to take it externally, juice as an example. So when it comes to echinoderms, what do you need to know? Endoskeleton, spiny surface, it's spiny skin, and then regenerative properties. Okay. I don't know if it's, I haven't made the test yet, so I don't know about the larval bilateral symmetry. I think if you focused on it, just like, okay, everything is bilateral except echinoderms, but they exist in the larval. If you can remember that, more power to you. I think it's still worth appreciating, okay? And here are some pictures of, here's your sea urchins, a feather star, another type of echinoderm, brittle star, they're night dwellers, they hang out underneath and they move very elaborately. I mean, they're quite something. There's a sea cucumber, homely looking thing. Okay. All right, and this is just talking about kinship as being related to the starfish, the echinoderm. We've got some girls that are holding up starfish, and there's the larval state, so you can see you can cut it down the middle, and it's the same on both sides, but obviously you cut it down the middle, it's not going to be the same on both sides. Okay, so now we're getting to the last group, and this can be convoluted. This can be very confusing. So we've got the phylum, and here we're looking at classes: lancelets, tunicates, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, and mammals, like class Mammalia, class Reptilia, class Amphibian, fishes. You don't necessarily need to know the classes, but we're going to be talking about these various groups of animals and what brings them to the table, what makes them unique. And again, we're talking about vertebrates. Now, one thing to keep in mind, invertebrates are the largest group of organisms or animals within the animal kingdom because of the insects. Invertebrates, not having a vertebrate, I think it's 99%. And only 1% or a little bit more, I don't remember the exact number, but it's very few of us in percentage-wise of the entire animal world that actually has a backbone. Okay? So now we take everything that I just talked about, that is one segment. Now let's go to the vertebrates, because it can be fairly lengthy as well. Okay, so when it comes to phylum Chordata, there are 4 features: a tail, a hollow nerve cord, a notochord, and pharyngeal slits, which is how they process oxygen. Okay, gills, as an example, taking in a volume, in this case water, and extracting oxygen out of it, just like we take in a gas, air, which is a combination of nitrogen, oxygen, argon, yada, 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 and our body extracts the oxygen out of it so we can respire. And of course, we need oxygen to make ATP. That's why we breathe, as you already know. Okay, so, but you might say, wait a minute, we don't have a tail. Well, but that's wrong. We do have a tail. When we're in embryonic stage, we do have a tail. It just, in the program of DNA, it falls off. Okay. So make sure we know these 4 aspects. Okay, now these are, even though they're vertebrates, you know, we're talking about vertebrates, but there are 2 that are classified as invertebrates: lancelets and tunicates. Okay, so the reason being is that they're able to still take in, they process water, and because they're marine environment, I think, as well as fresh water, they're able to take in that medium and then extract not only food but oxygen to grow and to create biological processes. Okay. All right, and then we go to most chordates are vertebrates, which of course is true. Now, chordata are vertebrates. Not, I just said that most of the animal kingdom is invertebrate, but we're talking about chordates, phylum Chordata. Most chordates are vertebrates, has a backbone. And vertebrates have an endoskeleton, obviously. Okay, so here's your lizard, and there's your backbone, vertebrate, and of course the internal skeleton. Okay. And of course, then within this, then you have different types of tissues. You have muscle tissue. You have smooth muscle tissue for your organ systems. I mean, you know, it goes on and on and on, but we're not going down that rabbit hole. Okay, so vertebrates, endoskeleton. Okay. Now, here is the various groups of chordates. That's what we're looking at here. Again, we're putting all the other phylums away, and now we're just looking at phylum Chordata. Lancelets, tunicates, hagfish, lampreys. These are the various evolutionary organisms, from the very simple to the more complex. Okay, and then these are, as we get more and more sophisticated over time, you can see we start developing the skull and backbone with the hagfish. We start developing the jaw with the fishes, the cartilaginous fishes. Those would be your sharks. You know, then we start getting a hardened skeleton. That's with your bony fishes, chondrichthyes. Okay, that'll be like your tunas, your snappers, things of that nature. Amberjack. And then, now, of course, what's different is in Chordata, we haven't seen, and everybody's swimming, everybody is marine. Now we're coming on to land, okay, and now we've got invertebrates that are on land, like insects, but now we've got animals in the form of amphibians. We've got a calcium hardened skeleton, as well as 4 limbs, okay. And then we go and then of course amphibians have their qualities, and then we go to reptiles. What do reptiles bring? Amniotic eggs. So now they lay eggs like turtles. Okay, you're familiar with amniotic fluid. You know, there's amniotic fluid, but we don't have a hard egg casing. It's within a placenta and so on, which is part of the mammals. And of course, then what we bring is hair, mammary glands, and a variety of others. Okay. So we get, you know, from the very simple of phylum Chordata, and we get more complex, just like we start very simple with phylum Porifera, the sponges, the very first animal on the planet based on the fossil record. And then it gets more sophisticated as we go through the phylums. All right, so don't get too confused over that. All right, now I'm just going to go through this. Again, there's so much, and again, we're not in zoology, so I just want to point out a couple of things. Notice that the body plan of a dolphin is similar as a shark, but they're two completely different species. Okay, they're both in the marine world, but this is a mammal. This is not. This is a fish. Their skeletons. This has an endoskeleton of calcium-5 bone. This does not. It's cartilage. Okay. So they are of a similar body plan. They're both the same marine body, but they're completely two different species. Okay. All right. Let's see how much I need to babble about all this stuff. Okay, we talked about the lancelet and tunicates. Those are the invertebrates of phylum Chordata. The hagfish, lampreys, cartilaginous fishes, and bony fishes. So these are marine and freshwater. They're not land animals. Okay, they're all aquatic. Okay, so we don't in the hagfishes we don't have a jaw at all. The lampreys, I think is when we start having a formation of a jaw. Then we have cartilaginous fishes where we start getting more sophisticated. And then we get calcium-5 bone when we get with the bony fishes. Okay. So what do you need to know with this is I guess the first vertebrates of phylum Chordata would be these guys right here. I mean, I'm just trying to think for you since I'm not teaching to a test. I'm passing information. I'm thinking of what, in my opinion, is what you should know. And hagfish, lampreys, cartilaginous fishes, bony fishes, they were the first vertebrates to evolve. And that would be the fishes. Okay? That's all you need to know about that one. Okay, and so here is some images of that. Okay? So I do take that back. So there is no jaw, but there is a skull, and there's a backbone in the lamprey. That's right, because he's got those circular teeth. What they do is they suck on to the side of a fish and just burrow into it and go, kind of like move it back and forth, and takes a chunk of flesh, and you'll see fish that has a big circle. That's what these guys do. And then there is no recognizable backbone. They have a notochord, meaning that there's a skull that has protecting a form of a type of a brain, and then there's a notochord that's running through, but there's no physical backbone, if you will, okay, where the lamprey does. So that's the evolution of it. Okay, so I got to stand corrected on it, because previous slide I said there's a jaw, but there's not. Okay, and just showing these are cartilaginous fish. So again, your fishes are the first true vertebrates. Okay, hagfish, lampreys, cartilaginous fishes, and bony fishes. There's your bony fish. Okay, I'm not worried about the lobe fin. This is kind of cool. You just name in the phyla. You can practice that if you wish. All right, now let's go to amphibians. We're almost done. Amphibians are the first terrestrial tetrapods. Make sure you know what the word tetrapod. Animals with 4 limbs. Okay. And then what you have after amphibians are reptiles. Okay. So that's all I want you to know about amphibians. They're animals that are, animals with that came onto land as tetrapods. Okay, anything else that we need to know? No, I think that's all we need to know. I mean, this is all good stuff, but this you may know. But what is interesting here, terrestrial adaptations, because again, we've been talking marine, what has adapted? Adult, as we know about frogs, I see this all the time in my pond, there they are having fun, and then you've got all these eggs here. You've got the tadpole that's swimming around and finally gets onto land, but now, so you got gills, that's, how they're processing oxygen, but then once they evolve out of water, then we've got lung formation. Okay, and then also moist skin. So this would be nice to know. Adult has lungs. Okay. There's some of your. I don't know what this guy is. I'm not very. I was going to look him up, but I'm not. I didn't. Y'all may know. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Sicilian. I guess I really don't know. Okay, so now we go to the reptiles, which now they're putting birds. They used to be class aves, and they now are putting those under reptiles. So what this means is can complete their entire life cycle on land is that they don't need to be in the water, and then they grow like a frog does. The eggs have to be in water. Then you get the tadpole, and that part of the life cycle is in water. Then they get out of land. Here, everything their entire life cycle can be on land. Okay. And this would include turtles, crocodiles, the dinosaurs, and birds. The reason why they incorporated the reptiles, I believe, is because the dinosaurs, they believe the reptiles, and they believe the birds are reptilian-like. And based on fossil records that they have found evidence, and so that's why they're putting that into the same grouping. And then you got lizards and snakes. Okay. Let's see, things that I would need let's see, reptiles. I think I mentioned this before, but reptiles, of course, and mammals are amniotes. You might know what an amniote is. Animals that develop inside a fluid-filled amniotic egg, like chickens as an example. We do, but not inside an egg, right? And we'll get to that in just a minute. So just know what the word amniote is. And that reptiles are the first grouping of animals or chordates that bring that to the table, to the planet. Okay. And then, of course, here's some examples of reptiles in the major groups: turtles, crocodiles, lizards, and snakes, and, of course, dinosaurs and birds. I think, I cannot pronounce this, but I think this is an illustration of a fossil that they found that gives them scientists and researchers the perspective that dinosaurs and birds are kind of one and the same, that there's an evolution there based on where and how they found the fossil, which is amongst other dinosaurs. So I think that's what gives rise to that thought process. No, here we go. So this explains it more, but by no means am I having. There's nothing on that I'm going to ask you. I find it interesting, and by all means, you can look at it and read it yourself and investigate. Okay, and then we're going to mammals. We are mammals. We fall into this group: horses, hippopotamuses, lions, bears, all sorts. So mammals are tetrapods that have hair, produce milk, and mammary glands. Make sure we know that. Know this statement right here. And then I want you to know that we can break mammals down into monotremes, and I think this is how we're going to come into conclusion, I'm hoping, because this is lengthy already. Monotremes, marsupials, and eutherians. And you're already familiar with marsupials, the kangaroos. This is how our young are brought into the world, okay? So here I think it's interesting, after the dinosaur mass extinction of approximately 65 million years ago, then mammals rapidly diversified. There was an explosion. And I'm guessing because the predator, dinosaurs were definitely the predator. So when you take away the predator, kind of like in the prairie, you take away the coyotes, all the rabbits and the prairie dogs and all that, they're going to multiply like crazy because there's nobody challenging them. No one's going to eat them. Okay, and I imagine that might have had something to do with it and the diversification. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing out an idea there, but it sounds plausible. Okay. So let's take a look. So instead of just understanding what I got to memorize the words monitoring. What is a monotreme? So the only modern monotreme, so it's not abundant across the species of mammals. There's only one. That's the duck-billed platypus. Okay. Of course, and this guy. Sorry, looks like a hedgehog. Okay. So they are the only surviving egg-laying mammals. So it's a mammal, has milk, so they can suckle and all that stuff, but they lay eggs. So quite interesting. And then you got your marsupials, okay, the possums. Okay, so after a brief pregnancy, so I don't know what brief is, gives birth to a tiny embryonic offspring, so I guess it's going to be very brief, and then develops within the pouch. Okay, so it's exposed to the environment, whereas with the next one, ethereals, we are young and we are protected from the environment for a very long time. 9 months at least for us. And then you've got other marsupials like the kangaroo. Okay, so that's one that's usually referenced. Okay, and then as I mentioned about eutherian is where our young us, we are born fully developed. Okay, in terms of all of our skin, the hairs, basically the programming of who makes us as an organism is done. Then it's just a matter of going through mitosis, as you well know, which is replication for growth. Okay, but what occurs is we have the placenta. Okay, and that attaches, and then we get our transfer of oxygen and nutrients through and within the placenta, the waste product and all that. So that's why it is so important for the mother to take in all the good nutrients. So I guess that's why when you go, you find out you're having a junior, they give you these prenatal medicine, vitamins to make sure you're taking in all the good nutrients, not just eating, pickles and ice cream, I suppose. I don't know. But anywho. Yeah, so eutherians, so that's what your eutherians are. And there's others, and dogs are eutherians, bats, hippopotamus, dolphin, okay. These are, of course, called cetacean, but you don't need to know that. Again, just want you to know that term and what that means, okay? That's all that's important. If you want to know more, you can take zoology. Now, this is where I'm not a connoisseur, so I am not going to really go into really much at all. Okay, because I question some of the things that that we have, because I think there's new information out there, and I don't know. I still think there's a big question mark about humanity itself. Okay. So, but of course, we are in the phylum Chordata. We're mammals, and we belong to the order of primates. But we don't need to know that. We just know we are mammals, and we're in phylum Chordata. All right. And this is just what falls into that line is lemurs, and I'm not a connoisseur with New World monkeys, Old World monkeys. I'm not common with that. And then humans and extinct Homo species. And again, I am not a connoisseur with that, so I'm just telling you up front. I think I said it enough times. We share common characteristics: large brains, binocular vision. Binocular vision meaning that we don't, like lizards may have their eyes one side and the other, so they can see pretty darn well 180 degrees where we can, we see forward. We have side vision, but only we can't focus on it, as an example. Limber joints, assuming that we don't have arthritis. Complex behaviors, some more sophisticated society-wide, making tools and things like that. And extended parental care. We tend to stay and coddle our young until they are strong enough and old enough and large enough to be able to handle things on their own. Also, very few young, okay? So like with primates, may only have one or two. Like same thing with a lot of your mammals. Dolphins only have a couple. We, one or two. Of course, there's sometimes you can have twins or triplets and all that. But typically, we have very few offspring, and we tend to take care of our offspring over a period of time so that they can integrate within the environment and then be sent off on their own. Okay. Let's see, anything here? Nothing that I'm going to. That's just that last one I wanted you to know, just by the way. So if you want to go back to that on the PowerPoint, you can. Yeah, all this is more FYI. So there's nothing on here that I'm going to require you to know, okay? Because I never took anthropology, so I am not one to try to BS you on this. You're as smart on this as I am. But I do find it interesting. I do find it interesting. I like this right here. A couple of points about human evolution that we know so far, we feel like we know, is that humans do not evolve from chimps. We just share a common ancestor. Okay? Human evolution did not proceed from one species to the next. And human evolution is not an orderly procession, and many species coexisted. So there's a variety of different type of humans. Okay? So that much I know. And then what is interesting, and it's so hard for us to imagine this, but some of the features didn't evolve all at once. As an example, upright posture. Okay? So we didn't necessarily walk upright and speak at the same time. Okay? I guess there's more grunting or things of that nature. So they evolved at different times. And of course, now we are the culmination of where we walk upright, we speak, and then we're obviously more advanced. But it is so hard for us to wrap our head around that. And also to think of that these folks, they didn't have any of the science and the knowledge or anything. I mean, they had disease. They didn't know what was going on. I mean, think of what was going through their heads. I mean, if you made it to the age of 20, if you even made birth, you were lucky. So quite honestly, it's amazing how we even made it at all. I mean, we needed to eat. I mean, there was no, it's almost, you can't even fathom of what it must have been like millions of years ago, when we didn't have these abilities and how we survived. I mean, you didn't survive long if you even did, how this planet got populated is something by humans. So anyway, all right, and then again, these are timelines, and I have a problem with these timelines because it's just so unimaginable for me. Imagine the history of life on Earth compressed into a single 24-hour day. So the clock starts ticking at 5,000 million years ago. So that's 5 billion years. Okay, so I guess midnight. And so for the genus Homo, arrives at just around 34 seconds before midnight. Down here, if we're looking at seconds. And then approximately 2 million years ago, and the Homo sapiens arrived less than 4 seconds before midnight. Less than about 200,000 years ago. It's just amazing. It's mind blowing. But yet this planet has been, and animals and such have been here for hundreds of millions of years, and us, Homo sapiens, have only been here supposedly based on the fossil record a few 100,000 years. So a blip in time of what this whole planet is, and that's where I think that, do we know the entire picture? I don't think so. That's my take. Anyway, I find it interesting. It's good stuff, interesting stuff. All right, guys, I'm not going to ramble any further as long as 50 minutes. This is the end of Weird Life. The next topic of 2 is going to be, I think it's photosynthesis is going to be our next topic. Okay, we'll see you in the next one.